Hey everyone, welcome to Literate-Ly with Lolo. That music was supposed to fade in and out, but it didn't work. So you know what? Better luck next time. And really fun story. I already recorded this for an hour, but I didn't put myself in the stream, so my voice wasn't captured. So that's fun. Anyway, for those of you watching today, Thursday, August, whatever, 10th, thank you so much. And for those of you watching later, I hope you enjoy it. Sit back, relax. I'm going to be reading today the whistleblower complaint filed recently around suppressing stories about Trump and Giuliani. And I noticed that the press was reporting this as kind of a Biden administration suppresses Biden DOJ, Biden this, Biden that. But I'm curious about the timing and the timeline and what it says. So I thought, well, let's read it. So I'll be reading it, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add my own commentary, and that's just my right as a comedian. So nobody take offense. This is not official reporting. This is satire. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, let's bring this baby boy up on screen here. Here we go. 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 Yeah. Well, it's the United States Senate Committee on the Judiciary. It's Statement of Somebody, July 15th, 2023. And away we go. My name, I'm a senior special agent in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My curriculum vitae showing my education, professional training, and service record with the FBI is attached. Enjoy. I've been a career counterintelligence agent. My work is focused on countering the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, international money laundering, and foreign influence over the U.S. electoral process. A diverse portfolio, you might say. In the course of my service, I have become aware of highly suspicious suppression of investigations and intelligence gathering on the part of FBI management. These actions can have no legitimate national security basis, in my humble opinion, and to the contrary, it could only be detrimental to its mission. The matters relate generally to the IRRIS. I'm going to call them RIS because I call them the IRS all the time. Sorry. In the context of foreign influence over U.S. elections and an apparent effort within FBI management to shield certainly politically active figures and possibly also FBI agents who have a relationship with those figures, if you know what I mean. I've served as the primary case agent on a variety of matters, including financial crimes, transnational organized crime, and what else? Yes, can't remember. I kind of whatever. Okay, anyway. Yes. I worked with wait, that's a better one. For more than something, my area of focus has been in Russian FCI. Keep in mind, that's what he said. My focus has been in Russian FCI, for which the Bureau trained me to speak, read, and understand Russian. Yes, it's true. It's Pravda. Blank, blank, blank. I worked with numerous other agencies at the headquarters level, including various branches of the U.S. Armed Forces and the U.S. intelligence community. I worked directly with the Department of the Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control, pursuant to my unit's role of designating enterprises and persons as specifically designated nationals for sanctions to have applied to them. Blankety blank blank. In this role, I handled the most complex and challenging source operations. To date, I have a clean record with no negative formal administrative disciplinary actions filed against me. Never mind. Don't look at the informal ones, darling, and please don't play the tape of last year's Christmas party. Thank you. With an active top secret, sensitive compartmented information, security clearance. That's right. Since joining the borough, blankety blank, this repeated relocation has caused considerable hardship for my family. Because it required uprooting my children from their schools and my wife sacrificing her own career aspirations as the baker of dog biscuits in order to follow me. I also worked long and unpredictable hours that did not allow me to be present as I wished in order to assist with raising our children, Manny, Mo, and Jack. Balancing work and home life is often challenging for special agents and requires sacrifice, but apparently I didn't read the full job description before applying. In 2017, when I said 2017, now who was the president in 2017? Well, I think it was Donald J. Trump. Around the time when Mueller's special counsel investigation was launched with a mandate to oversee the previously confirmed FBI investigation of Russian government efforts to influence the 2016 presidential election and related matters, let that roll off your tongue. I blankety blank started specifically focusing on foreign influence investigations related to the risks. I identified and recruited several confidential human sources with high level direct access to some of the most powerful Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs, as well as individuals within these oligarchs' transnational organized criminal networks through which they and risk agents operate. Some of the sources I was operating told me they had direct access to persons who were interested in the Mueller investigation, and I was requested to and did offer to assess the veracity of some of the information furnished by these sources for the Mueller investigation. My reporting was initially independent. My reporting was initially independent. Individuals working within the Mueller investigation became aware of my reporting. I just wanted to start. I was just looking at fun people. So I did it on my own without coordinating. And then they heard about it and they reached out to me. Individuals working with the Mueller investigation became aware of my reporting and contacted me on their own initiative. I did not go out looking for derogatory information damaging to any politically exposed person. Rather, my reporting derived from sources I was handling who had direct and high level access to people of interest to the investigation, blankety blank. Because of my expertise in Russian counterintelligence, the sources proactively volunteered information about people who they were concerned about within their own political parties. I understood through this interaction that I had become one of the principal agents engaged with the Russia-Ukraine counterintelligence matters related to foreign influence operations targeting elected officials. Look at me. My reporting identified and described an extensive transnational criminal network operating as an adjunct of the risks, which laundered billions of dollars derived from state funds intermingled with criminal activities. A significant portion of these funds flowed into Ukraine through the Russian-occupied Donbass region, which actually is part of Ukraine. Get it right, Slava Ukraina, along the Russia-Ukraine border. In partnership with certain risk-compromised Ukrainian oligarchs, these funds were laundered throughout the world with big machines utilizing a sophisticated criminal network of laundry clothes washers, composed of multiple shell companies and bank accounts. Through this network, hundreds of millions of dollars were laundered directly into the United States, where they bought Britney Spears tickets and BTS merchandise, where they were used to no, that's not right. They were used to finance covert operations. During this period, I gradually came to understand that nearly all the reporting on risk money laundering operations was viewed by senior figures at the Bureau as intensely politically sensitive. Well, that would track with exposing political interference, wouldn't it now? The concerns surrounding the Mueller investigation and the probe into Crossfire Hurricane launched by the Department of Justice Inspector General were plain enough, but other matters on which I was reporting appeared to be no less sensitive for reasons I could not always discern, because I'm not involved in every single investigation. In any event, those few of us who work in the counterintelligence field expect scrutiny. I'm fine with it, and are generally prepared to justify our operations and to critically assess our sources. Skepticism is expected, and careful vetting is important to assure the quality of the intelligence we collect. In and around January 2019, one of my CAHSs, hereafter referred to as Dynamo, facilitated a meeting during which two of his foreign contacts, Hudi and Hadi, provide information about several large-scale international money laundering schemes involving embezzlement and transfer of state funds by officials abusing their positions in probable violations of the FCPA. Both of these individuals were later recruited blankety blank blank blankety blank blank blankers. In January 2019, Dynamo blankety blank 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 presentation included detailed information concerning several multi-million and multi-billion dollar schemes. The information was based on an extrapolation. That's always, like just as good as facts. Nothing better than that. From Ukraine, as well as insight from Blank's consulting work, blankety blank. One of the described scenarios alleged that Hunter had been given a lucrative position on the board of directors of the energy company Burisma Holdings. Bidens and was likely involved in unreported lobbying and or tax evasion. Well, kids, I think we've learned that he was involved in tax evasion and not lobbying. So there. I recall having a discussion with the co-handler of Dynamo in which I expressed skepticism blankety blank, since the scenarios being described appeared to target only prominent businessmen and politicians who were his political adversaries. Well, what in the world? I think we have a rat. I suspected at the time that this could have been an attempt by RIS to push derogatory information into the U.S. intelligence community that would give the opposing political party, which had been shown to be favored by the RIS, a narrative to attack the character of Joseph Biden. In the event Biden became the Democratic presidential nominee, which did in fact occur several months later. In fact, the derogatory information concerning the Biden and Burisma quickly emerged in domestic U.S. media, suggesting that it was being provided for political influence rather than law enforcement purposes. The shock. At the Bureau, we are required, dang it, to conduct our investigations in a fashion that is blind to partisan interests and to ensure that investigative actions are never impacted based on the potential damage to one political party or the other. Notwithstanding that fact, we'll tell that to James Comey. Notwithstanding that fact, there was some suspicion, behind providing the information and the veracity of it, considering the fact that the Mueller Special Counsel investigation had laid bare Russia's attempts to influence U.S. politics by flowing information through other former Soviet republics, particularly Ukraine. Typical disinformation operations are based on partial truths, and the only way to determine the veracity of the allegations is to conduct an independent investigation to attempt corroboration. Therefore, I took this reporting very seriously, and I submitted it to the appropriate case file in which these considerations were memorialized. So basically, I took this information and I shared it. After receiving the presentation from blankety blank provided me a thumb drive, because this is the 80s, with some supporting documentation, much of which was in the Ukrainian language, which I do not speak. Isn't that convenient? So I guess I'm not such an expert on Russian, Ukrainian, foreign influence. After I submitted my 1023, which is basically my Dear Diary, reports on this information, I was put in touch with 2 agents working out of the Baltimore office on a case based in Delaware involving Hunter. I spoke on the phone with these agents who were very interested in the information due to its relation to their ongoing investigation that was mostly involving allegations of Hunter's involvement with drugs and prostitution. Information derived from blankety blank had previously been found to be credible, so this was handled carefully and quickly transferred over to the agents in Baltimore and serialized in their case file. While I transferred the information, I could not read the Ukrainian language, so I really had no idea what it said, and it required translation in order to determine the viability of the electronic documents presumed support of the allegations related to Hunter and Burisma, which were presented and summarized in a PowerPoint presentation created by Susan and serialized in the case file. I don't even know PowerPoint. I had no involvement in the subsequent investigation concerning Burisma and the Bidens and never received any updates from these agents as to whether the information was corroborated. But I later learned from the media that some of the allegations appeared to have been true. Hunter's very naughty and very well hung. Based on the level of corruption and the RIS's past usage of Ukraine for influence operations, raw single-source information derived from Ukraine is always viewed with skepticism by members of the intelligence community with some specialty and experience in Ukrainian matters, and that's not me because I don't speak Ukrainian. My supervisors were delighted that I had collected this information about Burisma, notwithstanding the obvious political sensitivity of the subject matter. My supervisors under the Trump administration were delighted that I had collected this information about Burisma. And I was later asked to present my findings to the assistant director in charge, Barney Rubble. By that time, I had learned about some disturbing allegations concerning activity involving President Donald Trump's personal attorney, Rudolph Giuliani, and his ongoing ties with persons suspected of being assets of the RIS. When I started to describe my independent source reporting involving Giuliani, blankety blank forcibly interrupted me and ended my presentation, ripping the cord from the wall and shutting down my Dell laptop. Regarding my concerns, Giuliani may have been compromised by the RIS in 2019 and 2020. High-quality source reporting on the Russian-Ukrainian oligarch Pavlo Yakovlevich Fuchs, a.k.a. Pavel Yakovlevich Fuchs, described how Fuchs had paid Giuliani 300,000 smackaroos to serve as his U.S. lobbyist. The source also reported that Giuliani had gone to the city of Kharkiv, Ukraine. Sorry, my pronunciation is really bad today. I apologize to all my friends. Slava Ukraina. As early as November 2017, where he spent 3 days with Fuchs, the now deceased mayor of Kharkiv, Gennady Adolfovich Kearns, and Vitaly Yuryovich. This would be easier if it were spelled in Cyrillic. Komuntinik. Okay. An oligarch with extensive criminal ties. In early 2017, Fuchs directly told Dynamo that he had paid Giuliani $300,000 to be his, quote, lobbyist. Later on, in 2019, Giuliani told Dynamo he had received $300,000 and had even had to apply pressure to get paid, because we all know Giuliani gets stiffed. When asked by Dynamo, Giuliani denied this payment was for lobbying, insisting it was for security consulting. By 2020, information collected by me through my sources, as well as other agents and analysts in the FBI, led to a determination described in peer-reviewed intelligence information reports. Yes, and I sent them to my mother, that Fuchs was a co-opted asset of the RIS. However, in 2020 and 2021, it became increasingly apparent to me that my reporting on Fuchs and his ties to Giuliani was negatively received by my superiors, who were eager for the flow of information about Fuchs and his relationship with Giuliani to stop. Oh, okay, now I understand. They wanted him to stop talking or reporting on Fuchs. Okay, I guess. I didn't really understand. The investigation had demonstrated Fuchs, an asset of the RIS, facilitated international money laundering through an established transnational criminal network on behalf of sanctioned entities. Few of these entities were the RIS, former Ukrainian President Yanukovych, Moscow-based oligarch Sergei Vitalyevich Grichenko, and one of Ukraine's most influential oligarchs, Ihor Valeryevich Kolomoisky. I requested that the Department of Homeland Security, Customs, and Border Protection officials perform a secondary screening of Fuchs the next time he attempted to enter the United States, and I provided the CBP with derogatory information I'd collected pursuant to my ongoing investigation of him. My intelligence reporting led to an independent decision made by CBP to revoke Fuchs' U.S. visa after he attempted to enter the United States in Miami on December 19, 2017. During CBP's inspection and interview of Fuchs, it was determined that Fuchs misrepresented several material facts in his visa application, like his weight, in regards to his family, his marriage, his businesses, and service in the Russian military. My God, what did he not lie about? Which he denied. Additionally, due to the ongoing FBI investigation and assessment that Fuchs is a national security threat and is matched to multiple lookouts ranging from customs export violations to ties with transnational criminal organizations, all cap, Fuchs was placed on the organized crime watch list with a really saucy picture from 2015 down in the Baltics. Subsequently to having U.S. visa revoked, Dynamo's contacts in the Ukraine's PGO and other sources residing in Ukraine informed Dynamo that Fuchs paid his representative, Andrei Telizhenko, in or around 2019 to establish contacts with U.S. politicians. Who has Telizhenko spoken with? By that time, Dynamo's reporting had proven to be highly reliable. Telizhenko had since been sanctioned by OFAC for election interference and by Ukraine's government for collaborating with Russia. Oh, sounds like a deer. On November 21st, 2022, I submitted a detailed recommendation to add Fuchs to OFAC's SDN list. That's right, I did. This 19-page summary report, which included 60 supporting exhibits comprising 5 years of my blankety blank own reporting as well as others, was submitted to the designated FBI detail lead at the Department of the Treasury, I imagine, he said. I never heard back concerning this recommendation, despite my several inquiries to ascertain how it was received and whether any clarification or further information was needed. So I submitted it to a FBI detailee of no name or level, who could very well have been a Trump-corrupted detailee, but I digress. I just have so many questions, my friends. My intelligence gathering related to Fuchs in 2020 and 2021 supplied important assistance to the FBI case agents supporting the criminal probe blankety blank. Specifically, I provided the case agent with information from a foreign source, referred to here as Mr. X. No, that's really his last name, who provided detailed information concerning the specific money laundering transactions, bank account information, and a voice recording of blankety blank making business deals with OFAC sanctioned blankety blank and other members of the Russian State Duma blankety blank 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 blank. My reporting from Dynamo and Mr. X relating to Fuchs described in detail how he and Kolomoisky, through fraud and manipulation, had seized control over revenue from the largest oil and gas field in Ukraine, Ukranafta Borinina, the assets of which were recently seized by the Ukrainian government. This reporting described in detail how hundreds of millions of dollars have been laundered into the United States from OFAC-sanctioned Russia Bank Kochenko, who had a 50-50, not 60-40, because he's a bad negotiator, profit-sharing arrangement with Kolomoisky. This work predicated a full investigation that resulted in the indictment of 2 subjects in Tampa, Miami, Florida, and was announced by the Department of Justice on April 17, 2023. The information furnished by Dynamo and Mr. X proved accurate and reliable and was essential to this effort. So, na. Fuchs had acted as a key risk asset in Kharkiv, Ukraine, at least from 2017 up until Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. My investigations uncovered operations run by Fuchs designed to provide a predicate narrative for a Russian invasion and subjugation of Kharkiv, the same city Giuliani had visited. Coincidence? I think not. The predicate narrative involved artificial fomentation of racial tensions that allowed President Vladimir Putin to claim Russia's invasion of Ukraine was, quote, the denazification of Ukraine, end quote, and for peaceful purposes. Putin believed that the city would be delivered to Russian forces by pro-Russian officials, but the resistance of the Ukrainian defenders and loyal officials frustrated this expectation. Kearns, the mayor of Kharkiv and a close associate of Fuchs, had previously accepted money from Putin in anticipation of Russia's attempt to acquire Kharkiv. When Kharkiv was not turned over to Russia prior to 2020, Kearns was then shot in the back, paralyzed, and later died in a Berlin hospital on December 17, 2020. During this period, Fuchs extended his de facto control over Kharkiv. In addition to his extensive dealings with Giuliani, Fuchs also had dealings with Donald Trump. Shocker. In the years before he stood as a candidate for president, engaging with him in discussions about a Trump Tower deal. Remember that? Engaging with and attempting to influence politically exposed persons in the United States appears to have been a priority for Fuchs over many of the last years, as well as Crochet. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 and the attempted but failed Russian occupation of Kharkiv, Fuchs faced criminal charges in the Ukraine and fled the country. He currently appears to be a resident in or around London using a UK foreign investor visa. Well, what the fuck, England? Get him the fuck out of there. I don't know. On June 26, 2019, I received a request for any and all known information related to the true name of my most sensitive confidential source, Dynamo. 2019, let's see who was president then. President Trump! This request for information originated from the White House, special events, intelligence agencies. What a group. What a mission that office must have. National Name Check Program, which was sent to me through the FBI New York field office. Oh! Well, now who else worked at the New York field office and was recently indicted or arrested on charges of bribery? We'll find out. Ostensibly, the purpose of this request was to vet Dynamo's attendance at a special event. To me, this appeared to be an attempt to discover if Dynamo was an FBI recruited source. This was a deep concern for me, as since Dynamo had direct access to and had reported on individuals connected to the White House related to the special counsel investigation. Blankety blankta blank blankest. Around the same time, the recently formed FBI headquarters-based Foreign Influence Task Force, that really runs off the tongue, recommended that I close down Dynamo as an FBI source out of their concern he had been in contact with agents of disinformation. What? I knew that Dynamo had been in connection with agents of disinformation because he frankly told me this and shared with me his conclusion that they were agents of disinformation who could not be trusted. The recommendation was baseless and suggested that the FITF had not engaged in sufficient depth of their research of Dynamo and his relationships with subsources. In fact, Dynamo had become one of the FBI's top sources, whose reporting had been extensively corroborated through predicated investigations, a marvelous mac and cheese casserole with numerous well-documented high-impact successes related to countering foreign influence and public corruption on both sides of the political spectrum, and he smells like pine needles. That is, we had established with a high level of confidence that Dynamo had contacts with precisely the persons he claimed to have contacts. Moreover, the quality of the information he furnished was exceptional, as was his hair, showed a consistently critical attitude towards the information he took in, and when tested, had stood up under the rigors of predicated full criminal investigations and legal process. But when the task force attempted to terminate Dynamo as a source, I argued blankety blank. I argued strongly against this recommendation, and an agreement was reached that Dynamo would remain operational. So I had nothing to complain about. Over the following 2 years, Dynamo went on to expose public corruption and risk operations of epic proportions. To name just a few things Dynamo did during this time: identified 2 corrupted FBI special agents, which provided the principal predication for an investigation that corroborated this reporting and resulted in the retirement, not prosecution, of these agents. Reported on foreign influence operations involving Bucks, Telezhenko, Giuliani, and identified several foreign agents who had not registered under the FARA. Predicated a $5 billion, that's a B, money laundering investigation resulting in indictment of 2 U.S. persons in Florida, provided key information that supported decisions to impose sanctions against Kolomoisky, provided information supporting restriction of U.S. visas for other criminal oligarchs attempting to gain entry in the United States, provided extensive intelligence concerning Russia and Ukraine disseminated in numerous IIR reports shared with the USIC, provided information allowing the identification and recruitment of many other sources in several countries, engaged in risky covert operations in full leather in support of numerous full FBI investigations. In my assessment, it is unlikely that any of these disruptions of national significance would have succeeded without the support Dynamo provided. I later documented these successes in detail in a memo that I provided directly to the task force. While Dynamo's information initially focused on Russian organized crime figures and likely Russian intelligence figures involved in influence operations in the United States, over time he began to furnish information surrounding high-profile U.S. figures who appear to have been caught up in some of these operations. I'll never tell. In particular, this included corroborated reporting from Dynamo describing how former New York City Mayor Giuliani used funds he collected from political influencers to travel and conduct a series of interviews with former Ukrainian officials, some of whom were later sanctioned by OFAC for election interference. Wow. Nevertheless, I must stress that, as it related to my own independent reporting from sources, Giuliani was himself never considered a subject. Because why? As I instead was focused on foreign organized crime figures and intelligence service assets, or agents who chose to deal with him. In the midst of my reporting involving Giuliani, which had previously been identified as by my supervisor as, quote, high impact, my management told me they received a call from a supervisor in the New York field office, who they did not identify. The supervisor had taken issue with my reporting and worked supporting overlapping investigative efforts in New York and Los Angeles, a routine function for agents. Therefore, blanketing management started suppressing my reporting in an increasingly aggressive fashion, which included discriminatory acts against me personally. After my reporting predicated and or supported several sensitive investigative matters, I was reprimanded by Boo Boo, assistant special agent in charge, for reporting on certain investigative categories and individuals. The reprimand made clear that certain individuals were off limits and that no reports about them could be processed, even if based on credible allegations of criminal activity from validated sources. So just don't do your job. I never received an explanation as to which of these persons were off limits. Well, then how did you know? Or considered prohibited sources? Despite my need to know, because I'm important, having overlapping investigative efforts, you see, very normal. Obviously, if the sensitivity arose from the activities of another group of investigators working the same matter, that would be understandable. But then my information would simply be channeled into the hands of others running the investigation. I had regularly collaborated with agents concerning the work of Dynamo. However, that does not seem to have been the case here. The matters I was apparently running up against were so compartmentalized and sensitive that it was impossible for me to diligently do any deconfliction or collaboration. This was an unusual situation for me, especially since I had been very well accustomed to work with compartmentalized investigations, involve support of the special counsel, insider threats and espionage investigations. As a career counterintelligence agent with that specific focus, who had worked at the headquarters level and managed the second largest program in the Bureau, if I do say so myself. Beginning on June 29th, 2021, immediately following a multi-location search warrant operation to disrupt criminal operations, an investigation predicated from my source reporting, I was suddenly hauled in for drug testing and then harassed on an almost daily basis with menial administrative matters like changing the water in the betta fish's bowl and grabbing lunch at Starbucks for everyone. This resulted in suppression of my intelligence reporting because I was busy making Starbucks runs. At the same time, I found my personal credibility was under continuous and baseless attack in ways that strongly suggest a sustained campaign to discredit me. Or it could have been that time I slapped Susan in the ass at the Christmas party. I don't know. I was subjected to administrative requirements that no other agents on my squad of the same GS 1310 rank faced, like buying coffee filters. I spent a significant amount of my time defending myself for trivial matters, like leaving the toilet seat up and pretextual fabricated accusations. This all appears to be designed to block my work as an agent, running sources with a particular focus on Russian and Ukrainian sources, and it had that effect. While I do not know exactly what had raised alarms, the conduct of my supervisors and the timing of their actions made plain that reporting concerning Giuliani and a group of people surrounding him with existing or historical ties to the Bureau gave rise to this retaliatory action. I cannot identify who these persons were. However, I later learned that at around the same time, former special agent in charge of intelligence in New York field office, Charlie, that's not my meatball, McGonagall, still likely had influence over certain people in the New York office, which may or may not be related to suppressive efforts. McGonagall has since been prosecuted for taking money in return for trying to get sanctions lifted from the Russian oligarch Oleg. That's my aluminum foil you're using. Vladimirovich Deripaska, the aluminium oligarch. One of the many oligarchs mentioned in my reporting over the years. I only know that the reporting blankety blank 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 blank. I only know that the reporting produced acute anxiety blank blank, coupled with an urgent desire to shut off my sources. Wow. Blankety blank 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 blank. Agents had taken notice of my independent reporting from sources concerning Giuliani, which demonstrated Giuliani had received hundreds of thousands of dollars from a group of political activists in California during the critical time leading up to the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Why, who were they? These activists had been getting sensitive information from two special agents who had been conducting database checks on their behalf. Why? My reporting was extensively corroborated pursuant to additional investigative actions, blankety blank. The money provided from this group funded Giuliani's efforts to secure from Ukrainian and likely also Russian sources information that Giuliani believed would affect the 2020 election. Let me just read that again. Information that that's not what I want. Information that well, we're just not going to do that. Oop, it really wants this whole thing. Okay, we're just going to highlight. No, okay. That's fine. Despite these accomplishments and neutralization of insider threats, I was reprimanded by my ASAC and defamed by my management, apparently because of this work and reporting and not the attack on Susan during the Christmas party. As their efforts to suppress this investigative work escalated, my direct management specifically told me in writing that I was no longer allowed to do any reporting related to public corruption, criminal matters, anyone in the White House, or any former or current associates of President Trump. Off limits. You're sitting in the hall closet. At this point, I was in a difficult position, being threatened with disciplinary action for insubordination. Because I continued to investigate unreported flows of foreign money into U.S. politics with no regard to any political party, which I believe to be my job. These reports came not because I was investigating political funding per se, but because the source I was running reported these acts to me. I believed, and continue to believe, that these acts appear to be criminal in nature and warrant investigation. This reporting was largely for the benefit of the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, Jeffrey Berman. On August 21st, 2020, Berman was suddenly fired from his post just after a cooperating witness I was running undertook to tape conversations with Giuliani, interviewing Ukrainian officials at the request of Berman's office. I subsequently learned from reading Berman's book, as we've learned so many things during the last 7 or 8 years, of the preeminent U.S. attorneys holding, Berman's book, Holding the Line, Inside the Nation's Preeminent U.S. Attorney's Office and Its Battle with the Trump Justice Department. Wow, what a mouthful. That Berman had been placed under extraordinary pressure by the White House and Attorney General William Barr, Five Nights at Freddy's, which aimed to protect President Trump and his personal attorneys, Giuliani, Steve Bannon, and other members of Trump's inner circle, from criminal exposure and political embarrassment. Well, that's the least of their worries now. And that he connected his dismissal with an extraordinary efforts to protect these men. I had no knowledge of these extraordinary facts at the time, although I had just complained for years about my investigations being suppressed. But on subsequent reflection, the pressures that Berman faced and the pressure brought to bear on me were simultaneous and obviously closely related, because that's how good a special agent I am. In 2020, I had also already recruited another source referred to here as Genius, with access to numerous individuals who became subjects of investigations concerning the events at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Genius provided helpful information and furtherance of those investigations. In 2021, when my source had been diligently reporting on matters concerning the Capitol riots and other counterintelligence matters, I went on a vacation because it's me time. Upon my return from vacation and the brilliant tan that I got, I found my management had a series of meetings and decided, without consulting me, as I was on Do Not Disturb, or allowing me to provide any input, to discontinue reporting from this source, ostensibly because he had previously made inappropriate comments on social media. I was aware of and had already reported concerning these postings and knew that they had been done in an attempt to garner trust from certain racially motivated violent extremists, which proved to be effective. I had already reported that this informant had previously been branded as a racist, which empowered him to infiltrate various tightly knit, dangerous, and violent fringe groups. Well, let's hope he put it to good use. Blankety blank blank blank, having worked high-impact sources for well over a decade, I had never before seen a forced closure of an informant without at least allowing the handling agent to provide input. This was especially alarming to me, since I was actively reporting on numerous ongoing high-stakes investigations. It is not an unusual concept for the FBI to make contact with perceived criminals, or even real criminals, and flip them to report on their criminal associates. This is basic informant operational procedure. The established mechanism for an FBI special agent to address compromised management is to report the matter of concern confidentially to the FBI's Inspection Division, which is supposed to work with the IG to investigate credible allegations of misconduct. I've seen this process work before. It is effective, as long as the INSD is diligent and even-handed in its inquiry and discipline of problematic managers. Due to a history of retaliation against employees who reported on abusive managers, Congress enacted the Whistleblower Protection Act, a basic familiarity with which belongs to the annual training for all FBI employees. This statute makes it illegal for a manager to retaliate against an employee and violate the employee's protection under this statute. But by the end of 2021, the suppression of my reporting and extreme micromanagement became crippling, and I reported these facts to the FBI's Office of the Ombudsman, which recommended I file a whistleblower complaint with the INSD as well as with Bobo. I did not want to become a whistleblower for fear of retaliation. When I was at my wit's end and out of options on January 7th, 2022, however, I filed a whistleblower describing in detail numerous acts of intelligence suppression of my reporting related to foreign influence in the Capitol riots, retaliatory acts, and defamation of my own character through hyperbolic narrative administrative noncompliance my manager had concocted, which never rose to the level of any formal administrative disciplinary action against me due to lack of sufficient evidence of any wrongdoing committed by me. After filing that complaint, just as I feared, I endured even more aggressive suppression, bitter retaliation, and intra-agency character attacks, as required per the FBI's annual whistleblower training, which I went to and sat there while everybody just ignored me. I reported in detail to INSD all the acts of reprisal against me contemporaneously as these events occurred, with numerous supporting exhibits and name witnesses. Even though these acts violated my protected status and were therefore illegal, to my knowledge, no actions were ever taken to correct ongoing reprisals and suppression of intelligence, with the exception of an auto reply from the INSD when I sent my periodic updates and a letter sent to me from the Internal Affairs section of the INSD, which is worded exactly the same as letters sent to others as reported acts of misbehavior to the INSD. So I got a form letter. My management never acknowledged my complaint or conducted a bona fide, which is misspelled. What? Inquiry or interview of me or any of the other agents that I mentioned that could verify my. Hold on just a minute. I gotta blow my nose. But anyway, about a month after I submitted my whistleblower complaint, within weeks before and following Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, the task force again pressed for discontinuance of reporting from Dynamo. This time, my management mandated this action and used the task force to avoid direct accountability for closing such an important human source who had been reporting on several ongoing matters to hold a multinational threat to life matter, including a multinational threat to life matter. My management had been talking with representatives in the task force without my involvement, and then as Dynamo's handler. Moreover, they required closure of not only Dynamo, but also any source with the slightest contact with him or who were recruited as a result of his reporting. And there were many other protective sources in that category who took me years to develop. This included confidential sources physically located in Ukraine who had predicted Russia's impending invasion as a premise, saving Ukraine for another revolution, and were continuing to report on relevant events as they unfolded in real time during the invasion. Since the Ukrainian diaspora was relatively small, it was nearly impossible for me to identify and recruit new people who could report on this subject matter who had no connection whatsoever to Dynamo. All of this was transpiring as the White House was urgently attempting to assemble information on Ukraine, including Russia's preparation for an invasion, the loyalty of inner circle figures within Ukraine to Russia or Ukraine, the roles played by various oligarchs and organized crime groups, and in particular, a matter of acute concern, the relationship between President Volodymyr Zelensky and his erstwhile patron Kolomoisky, like the tequila patron Kolomoisky, who had become increasingly pro-Russian. On each of these points, Dynamo and some of his subsources had proven among the most credible sources developed by the intelligence community. The baffling decision to shut down Dynamo and his subsources deprived U.S. decision-makers at the highest levels of vital information that should have informed essential U.S. commitments undertaken as Russia invaded Ukraine. This included detailed information on the effect that Kolomoisky had installed his paid agents in a series of senior positions surrounding President Zelensky. Details in surrounding Kolomoisky's funding of Zelensky's presidential campaign and other anecdotal information concerning Kolomoisky's influence over Zelensky and his ambiguous attitude about the Russian invasion itself. It would have been helpful for the intelligence community and policymakers to have known that Kolomoisky had become increasingly pro-Russian following the Ohio investigation, and that he made a 50-50, not 60-40, because he's a bad negotiator, profit-sharing agreement with OFAC-sanctioned Kurchenko, who had been under risk protection in Moscow. It would have been helpful to know that Andrei Yermak, Zelensky's chief of staff, would likely try to influence Ukraine's response to a Russian invasion, which is ultimately what occurred and was blocked by General Valery Zaluzhny, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian forces. I subsequently learned that much of the information I'd collected from Dynamo and sub-sources was read directly to the U.S. ambassador in Kyiv following Russia's invasion and was deemed to be high-value intelligence. Nevertheless, much of this information was kept out of the normal intelligence reporting channels, apparently because senior figures within the Bureau thought it might embarrass figures in the NYFO. At the meeting I attended, during which the task force was attempting to suppress my reporting by forcing closure of the majority of my productive sources, whose reporting had been extensively corroborated by what and successful in blunting foreign influence. What? Wait, sorry, I lost my point. Oh, the task force section chief admitted to me that I was not the only field agent whom they were asking to close their sources. Oh, so this wasn't retaliation. It was a program change. Okay, well, or it was, I don't even know. I need to know some of the people involved in this before we make big decisions about what's he blowing the whistle on. Let's just put it that way. I want to know on whom is the whistle being blown. That's what I want to know. I was extremely disturbed that they admitted there was a national suppressive effort led by their small group of analysts who lacked operational field experience and whose judgment appeared to be driven entirely by high-level bureau politics. When I questioned the wisdom of their request, the supervising analysts claimed their recommendation relied on highly classified information from the National Security Agency. I had read the classified top secret document they were relying on, so I actually knew the answer before I even asked it, which had numerous citations from documents that I myself drafted, and I knew it did not, in fact, support her conclusions. They then claimed that they had additional information. When I asked to review this additional information and clearly articulated my need to know, they refused to share it with me, even though I had the same clearance they did. They even admitted they had no evidence of any wrongdoing and no examples of any false information intentionally provided by me by my confidential sources. The closure of Dynamo and other sources was in fact not for cause, as specifically documented in the official case file, which I myself no longer have access to. Noted. The other two co-case handlers of Dynamo were present at that meeting as well and could attest to these events. Are they still the co-handlers? I guess that's closed down. Alarmingly, the source portfolio was effectively gutted just after I submitted my whistleblower complaint. This occurred exactly as Russia invaded Ukraine, when priority intelligence collection requirement solicitations from headquarters had been disseminated to all special agents requesting reporting on Russia-Ukraine matters, which I had been doing with these same confidential sources. I believe that the intelligence was suppressed could have easily influenced U.S. decisions surrounding the conflict. High-level figures at the Bureau had, however, apparently reached the conclusion that they wished to shut down or greatly limit intelligence collecting relating to Ukraine, presumably because they believed it was threatening to persons they wished to protect. After closure of my most prolific sources, within a few months I recruited new sources who could report on similar matters related to public corruption and Russia-Ukraine matters, but they weren't as good as Dynamo. Those blue eyes. After this occurred, blankety-blank specifically, and in writing, forbade me from reporting on public corruption and criminal matters and any former or current associates of Trump, even while my whistleblower complaint was still active, alleging intelligence suppression under the watch of these same managers. I was the only special agent on my squad under the suppressive mandate, and I was at that time the principal agent reporting on those specific matters. I was told that I could no longer input information directly into commonly accessible databases used to document source reporting. That is, I was told that I was first to send my drafts via email to my supervisor for review, and editing prior to putting them into the designated system and routing them for official approval and serialization into the case file. In other words, kids, I was locked out of the Google Docs. Requiring a confidential source handling agent to first clear the reporting through their manager prior to inputting it in the official system and routing their reporting to them for official approval is not, all caps, typical. Nor is it required per policy and is a case of extreme micromanagement and control of intelligence input, especially for one of the Bureau's more senior counterintelligence agents. It appeared to me that this editorial process was designed to block the inputting of any information which might compromise figures associated with the NYFO, who are being aggressively protected. Or maybe it was just to protect and investigate. I don't know. We'll find out, I'm sure. After being prohibited from reporting on public corruption and criminal matters, my management told me that they only wanted me to focus on Russia FCI, for which they admitted I had a unique skill set, as I explained in the beginning. That is my area of expertise. I explained to them that based on my more than 10 years of experience working FCI, it is impossible to effectively work FCI in isolation without also reporting on public corruption and organized crime. This requirement suggested that my managers had little serious understanding of how Russian FCI operated, of the intricate interrelationship between the risks and the Russian organized crime groups operating within the United States, of the channels used to finance Russian influence operations, or of the specific role played in influencing politically exposed persons in recent operations. But I do. My expressions of concern to internal affairs produced no changes. In October 2022, the same manager who had been the subject of my reporting, blanken, within just a few weeks of his promotion, oh, the bitch got a promotion, which gave him unilateral authority to transfer me against my wishes anywhere he wished. He removed me from my human intelligence squad, forced me to cease contact with all of my sources, and placed me onto a surveillance squad that does not allow me to operate sources or do any more independent reporting. I'm changing coffee filters. At the same time, workers in other branches of the intelligence community, including Boppity Bop, were told that they were not permitted to communicate with me further, as they conveyed to me after I had been working with them for years, co-handling sources. This was opposite from the training and the guidance that I'd received throughout my career that encourages maintaining of strong liaison contacts. As he was forcing my removal from my squad and transfer, I made sure the ASAC confirmed in writing that he was aware of my whistleblower complaint and the devastating impact his retaliatory action was having on my family due to the inflexible perpetual surveillance shift schedule and several hours of commute time. I also formally appealed to the headquarter transfer unit and requested a reasonable accommodation for consideration of transferring me to a squad that operates closer to where I live, so that I could be present for my family and assist with care for my special needs daughter. These appeals were ignored and denied. Being on a surveillance squad, all of my actions are now tracked, and I'm only in the office twice per month, and it's never on pizza day. It has now been several months since I was removed from my position. On several occasions, I was contacted by sources I had previously run, who wanted to be sure that I knew that they had been contacted by other agents with better haircuts, who had an apparent assignment to developing a portfolio of disparaging information about me. Having no other options, on November 28th, 2022, I filed an EEO complaint. As is his right, it is very important that everyone knows they have a full right to whistleblowing and EEO complaints. I stand firm in that. I'm just satirizing his statement. It was during the EEO complaint process that my management, for the first time, made some concessions by transferring me to another surveillance squad stationed closer to where I live. So I did get what I wanted. I had to complain so that I would not have to commute 4 hours per day. Management also offered me money to withdraw my whistleblower complaint, along with my EEO complaint, which was the first time they ever acknowledged the existence of the complaint. Specifically, on February 21st, 2023, they tried to get me to drop my whistleblower complaint for a payment of $14,000. This offer was extended in the course of the mediation portion of the EEO settlement, and I was told that I was forbidden ever to allude to the fact that it was made. I refused to take the money to drop both complaints, so that I could keep my protected status under the law and hopefully force reform through my whistleblower complaint, which I still consider active. I continue to be devoted to the Bureau and its mission. As of this time, I continue to be active within the Bureau and maintain my high-level clearance in good standing. Blankety blank blanks, working on surveillance missions with no relevance to my area of specialization and training. I'm tracking fan responses to Taylor Swift. I do not fully understand why I have been singled out for this treatment, nor who exactly is driving it. But my strong suspicion is that one or more of my sources provided truthful, accurate information that is harmful to person or persons that higher-ups in the Bureau are trying to shield. Thank you. Thank you for coming today. This has been a satirical, dramatic reading of the FBI whistleblower in relation to suppressing investigations on Trump and Giuliani and their associates. And in all seriousness, I am a firm believer in the whistleblower process. I am a firm believer in the EEO and its processes. And I hope that we learn more through this whistleblower complaint, because I think there's more going on here than what is being reported in the media. So there's that. So I like to go to the source. So thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I didn't want to get a music strike, even though I have rights to use the music that I used before. So I'm using my stupid beat that I created. And if you know, you know. All right. Have a great day. Talk to y'all later. Bye.